Good morning, everyone. Just getting everybody in from the waiting room. Hang on just a minute and we'll get the screen share started and get going. All right, teammates, I'm going to cover up the participant panel now. So if anybody else that's a co-host sees folks coming in, please let them in. All right, let me get my screen share started. All right. Hopefully you are seeing the slides for Mentor Webinar 50. Thank you for joining us this morning. To get started, I just wanted to get start with some celebrations. So believe it or not, or to Mentor Webinar 50, when we started back in 2020, when the agency developed my position, we only had 66 mentors serving youth and care students statewide, where now we have 157 Check and Connect mentors serving youth and care and prevention students. And little caveat, this does not include our coordinators or youth and care directors. So there's more in our mentor army, but this is specific to our mentors. And when I started, only 16 of our school districts were reporting pretty consistently, whereas now me and my team celebrated last Friday that every team has submitted before the period one deadline. And preliminarily, we've seen about 2,000 students served in Utah, but we're still waiting on the aggregated data in the dashboard. All right, so here's our agenda for today. As usual, I will take care of the mindfulness and introduction of presenters. And then today's core competency review will be just a reminder of national resources and state resources we have for mentors. And then we'll have a guest presentation on reintegration planning. My teammate David Sollami will lead out with support of Rachel Edwards from Juvenile Justice Services and Destiny Upton, who's with the Administrative Office of the Courts. And then, as usual, we'll devote that last 15 minutes to mentor breakout rooms and allow you guys to go in and have conversations together or with our trainers, or continue that conversation with the presenters. All right, so for our mindfulness moment this morning, I thought we'd do another round of trivia. So get your Zoom chat open, and I've got to figure out where mine is also. There we go. Okay, I have my Zoom chat open. So what we're going to do this time is a round of what is a mentor and what is not a mentor. So go ahead and add those to the chat. If you want to preface it with is or is not, so that we know what you're implying. We're going to go ahead and grab some of those answers and put them on the slides and share them. So, I love it. I'm starting to see the chat pop. All right. Garrett, love it. Is rad. Absolutely. All right. Let me see if I can truly multitask and do two things at the same time here. All right. Let's see. All right. Julie's on that one. We'll take is not. Keep those answers coming in. All right, I think I'm going to go ahead and read them out actually, because I'm not sure this is working the way I had intended to with the slides. So, mentor is not an advocate, or is an advocate, is not a therapist. We've got advocate twice, absolutely, and as I giggled, is rad. You are not an aide, that is absolutely true. You're not a therapist, is not boring, is a support, is not a bank, sorry, my screen was having a hard time there, is a support. A mentor is a guide to best practice in the education system, is someone who inspires their students to use their voices to say what they need or want and need, is not a disciplinarian, absolutely. Motivates desire, is not a therapist or an enabler, is not a therapist. I'm feeling a theme lately. A mentor is not a tutor, is not an advocate, is not a piggy bank, and is a safe space. Awesome. Let's see. A mentor is a friend, or not a friend, but friendly. Ooh, that's always an important one to remember. All right. Well, thank you for playing a round of mentor trivia with me. We'll go ahead and move on. Sorry about that, to that core review. So, like I said, we were going to touch on our national and state resources. But real quick, I wanted to introduce Charlene and Amanda. So, Charlene has been working with our youth and care students as both a check and connect mentor and a school counselor since fall of 2023. As part of her duties, she supports the students in the Cache Valley Youth Center, in addition to the mainstream students in Logan School District. And she's also one of our certified check and connect trainers. Amanda has been working in both, or been working with both YIC and other at-risk students as a check and connect mentor since fall of 2024. She has a unique mentor role because she works in the Stansbury High School Stallion Support Center in addition to her mentoring responsibilities. Amanda is also a volunteer and supporter of the athletics programs in Tooele County School District. All right. So, with that quick introduction of my guests, I do want to remind you of our national main resource, which is our Implementing with Fidelity manual. It was kind of fun putting this slide together because every time I do something like this, I'm quickly reminded of some of the things we have at our fingertips, like the strength-based interview questions, how to start conversations with families, with students about their future orientation, other school staff, learning goals, all kinds of good stuff. It also has our templates and potential interventions and other resources that Charlene's going to go into a little more following this. The next resource National gives us is in our participant guide. And I'm pretty sure it's on page 4 of most of the participant guides. It's a URL, and the it's a zip file that downloads 28 different templates. So I think, or excuse me, 28 different templates. What I know about this one is that sometimes you have to get your IT staff involved to get it to download and be available to you. Another note to make is that there's a new tool National has put out that is the monitoring tool overview, which is the National's data collection tool. And we all know that we use our Utah data collection. So just a note that that's one that wouldn't apply. All right. Sorry to be a little distracted. I saw the chat pop in there. Are we good on sound at this point, friends? All right, awesome. Okay, well, cool. That's good to know because I want to turn the next slide over to Charlene Hicken. All right, Charlene.
Okay, awesome. Um, this is just a template that you can find from your, like Amanda said, on page 4, there's that website. It gives you the whole list of things you can find. I have taken this template and adjusted it to meet my needs. Whether I'm sending a message to a parent, a guardian, or a teacher, I just kind of tweak it a little bit to meet my needs. So there's maybe a line in here that says that I will use my mentoring at a level that meets their needs. And so, like if you have a little elementary school student, it's going to be a little bit different than if you're meeting with a high school student. I don't put that line in when I'm sending the letter to high school students because they know that I'm not going to come in with picture books or little kindergarten kind of things for a high school student, right? So the places on this template where it's in yellow, you can just fill in your names. Make sure I've had to double check and triple check when I send these. Read through that you have the correct name of the student that you're mentoring, and if it's a him or a her. I've caught myself a few times where I have maybe a Susie in there and it says her from when I've used it from my last letter that I sent. So just make sure all these places that are highlighted that you double and triple check that you're putting in the correct name. You don't want to send Matthew's guardian a letter that says Susie, so just be aware of that and use the words to make it meet your needs. Be clear on that. It's easy. And I have used right here the logo placeholder. These are editable, which is so amazing and great. I downloaded my Logan City School District logo right over here. And then I keep obviously the Check and Connect logo on the right, but it just makes it so it's more personal coming from your school district. And also, whenever the form on the right is for if you are prevention, if you're mentoring students on the prevention side. If you're mentoring on youth and care side, you don't need a permission form signed. Your register to permit that comes from the case manager, the caseworker, that is your permission. But if you are mentoring on the prevention side, you must have a permission from the parent or guardian. So again, put your logo from your school into this spot over here on the left. And I've found it helpful. I've often had students that have been in state care and then the case is closed and they've returned care to mom or dad, or maybe they're with mom or dad on a trial basis, but they're still officially under state care, right? So their legal guardian is still the case manager. When that case closes and care is returned to mom or dad officially, you will then, if you're going to continue care with that student mentoring, you're going to need this permission form. So what I've done in the past is print out the permission form and have it with me when I go to that team meeting, so that then you can ask the parent or the guardian, whoever is there, mom, dad, aunt, uncle, whoever it happens to be, would you like me to continue meeting with your student this year? And if they say yes, you're like, awesome, I'm going to need your permission to do so now that you are the guardian and the child is no longer in state custody. And then you just pull your little form right out of your file there and have them sign it right then. It's so much easier. So that's just a trick I use when you have a student transitioning from state care into back with their parent or guardian, because you will need permission to continue mentoring services at that point. Are there any questions up to there? If there are no questions, you can go ahead to the next slide. Oh,
One question, is it very difficult to get the parent signatures
well, they're saying
required for
it
prevention?
is very difficult to get parent signatures. It is required for prevention. It's absolutely a necessity, 100%. You can email it, you can mail a hard copy, you can send a hard copy home with the student. I've used all of those avenues. And then it's hard to get it back. That's kind of the thing that holds you up, is waiting to get that permission form back when you're working with a student on prevention. We have a lot of that with our social workers trying to get permissions from them also. Yes, that's awesome. Electronic form that the parent can fill out on their phone. That's amazing. A Google form. All good answers. All those are awesome. This permission form here is where you can mentor that from the national website that we talked about on page 4 in your participant guide. That is where I got it from. Right. Oh, Amanda just said it's in the downloads. Awesome. Are there any more questions, or have we answered everything on that?
I think we covered that.
Okay. Okay, this is a new one that Check and Connect has added. I didn't see it 2 years ago, at least, when I first started. And this one is so cute and so fun to use with your younger kids. I mean, Maybe a high school kid would like it, but I'm guessing no, they are a little bit too mature for that. So this one is so cute. I would say, especially for your kids who can read, I would use this for your over third grade, third, fourth, fifth graders. Um, if you're working with them on finding a solution to a problem, then you can help them and they can write out right here the problem, have an idea for a solution, a couple of solutions, and what's maybe going to happen. And it just makes a visual for your littles to see, and then they can even decide if it helped. And I love how we have our little smile faces down here where they're like, yeah, that was a good idea. It worked out well, or maybe not so great. And then they can circle that. And I've also found that if you have this very cute form to use with your younger students, they like colored pens, like gel pens, or not just a colored pencil, not a marker because those smear, but like a colored pen. And then they choose their favorite colors and they're more engaged if they're writing with their favorite color. I found that to be a plus. So I just carry around like these in my bag with 5 or 6 different colors, and then they can choose. And their eyes kind of get big when you're not giving them a pencil, but when you're giving them a choice to use a colored gel pen. Anyway, that's just something I found to be helpful. And it's super fun because they're the ones making those decisions, right? Anyway, go ahead, Amanda, to the next slide. This is what is fun to use for your older students, obviously. And the thing I love about this one is that it shows the arrows. It tells you, can I solve this problem? No? Oh, well, then we're going to have to figure out a different way to think about what the problem really is. We're going to have to verbalize it in a different way. But if they say, yes, can I solve this problem? Then you think of 4 or 5 solutions and write them down here. You put the pros, you put the cons, what steps you're going to need to take. And then this is your review page over here. Did it work? I'm not sure if it worked. What can I do to find out what else I can do to make it work? It didn't work at all. No, I got in a fight because I decided I had a conflict to solve, and the path that I decided the solution I was going to use was to meet the kid after school and punch him. Well, it didn't work. I found out it didn't work. That was bad. I got suspended for like 5 days. So then when you meet with them again, you can say, oh, well, that didn't work. Why didn't it work? What else do you think we could do? And you can go back over to this sheet and choose a different possible option. Oh, maybe I could practice some anger management skills and take 5 deep breaths before I punch that kid. And then you can come back over here and see, well, did that work? Yes, it did. I was really super mad, but I didn't punch him and I didn't get suspended. So, and they need to write down everything, even if they're going to say, I'm going to meet him after school and punch him out, have them write it down. But then they also need to think, what do I think is the consequence of if I take that step? What will happen? So these are just fun. I don't know. Colored documents speak to me. I think they speak to students also. That's why I carry colored pens with me. But, even the high school kids, if they don't have their own, they like to use your colored pens. I'm just telling you, I'm a grown up. I like to use colored pens. So just have those available. And sometimes the students don't want to use these forms, but these are just available to you. And they're kind of make it more fun, I think, when they're trying to figure out how to solve a difficult problem. Are there any questions on that? It's pretty straightforward. Like I said, I love the arrows that show the path, and that really speaks to our older students. So,
Not a question, but a what do you call it? Recommendation. The
mm,
Fixon erasable gel pens are a hot one up
oh,
in Uinta.
yes, those are very cool as well. I currently don't have the erasables. I guess I need to go get them. That's a good idea. I have seen a lot of my students, even in math, I get freaked out when I'm sitting over near them and they start feeling a problem and they're using those. And I'm like, oh, wait, it's the erasable one. Okay. And the teachers even go around and check that. So that's a good idea. That's a really great comment. Thank you. Anything else? If not, we can move on. This form I love because it is your SMART goals. And again, it's specific. It shows the student exactly how to make a SMART goal. It lists each thing out. I mean, and it's colorful. You can use different colored pens if you want. And so to make it specific, and it teaches them by reading your SMART, is it realistic? Is it achievable, measurable? And then you need to give them examples. I always give an example of a specific goal and then help them choose one and to know how you're going to know if you met the goal. But this form is great. I maybe have one right here that a student filled out. I mean, and it's just kind of fun to see what they actually think of, like I'm going to finish an IXL and take the quiz for it. And that was the initial goal. And then they made the specific things of what they're going to do. Yes, it's measurable. How do you know it's measurable? Well, it will show me that it was completed on the website of the IXL, sorry. So then this is just something on this other side here. So the SMART goals page is just great for your older students, especially. I haven't used this for the littles because it leans more toward the way the older kids think and helping them make specific goals, because a lot of them are like, I'm going to get a 90% in math. Okay, that's awesome. How are you going to know if you accomplish it? Well, you'll get a 90%. What are the steps you're going to take? Is that actually achievable when you're failing to get a 90%? Or maybe would it be more realistic to shoot for, say, a 78% instead of a 90? And then if they get the 90, then you go get them the biggest candy bar you can find. So that's just on the SMART goal side. This is just for long-term academic goals for the grading period. You make sure that they're SMART goal specific, but it just has these little boxes, grading 1 through 10, checking, where the students can say, how important is it for you to meet this goal? I mean, maybe it's really not that important to them. So if they can actually put some skin into the game and think about the goal that they're making, if it's important to them and you're not telling them what to have their goal be, then it's going to be more achievable for them if they have put some thought into it and like, yeah, that really is important to me. So this is just an extra little thing, kind of a thought page that's the same kind of thing, but a little bit more specific. Are there any questions? Again, all of these are on the website that you can find.
Not seeing anything in the chat.
Awesome.
Well, thank you, Charlene.
You bet.
All right. Okay, well, let me move on. So I've got a little bit here, and then we'll move to Amanda Jones. So bringing us back to our state resources. Hoping you guys have all seen these a handful of times at this point. But we do have our Utah Mentor Practice Profile, which was developed with the national template. We all like to tease it's mentoring in a nutshell. And then our best practices document, which was really our first attempt at helping mentors through the nuances of Utah mentoring. And we updated that recently to be more inclusive of our prevention mentors. And then we also have our quote unquote one pager, which is our role and responsibilities document that helps everybody understand what role they have in the Check and Connect program. In addition to those, like today, we have hosted our mentor webinars, and the recordings are posted on the YIC YouTube channel. We've done topics like de-escalation strategies, relationship advice, embodying the role of a mentor. We've had Melissa from the Utah Parent Center a few times, and loads more presentations. So go and check those out. And then we also created the Utah Mentor Refresher Trainings. They've been so successful. In fact, National has come up with something similar, except theirs is a 2-day full review of the model where we have really made ours specific to our local needs. Um, so those are just a reminder of the Utah resources. And then I've invited Amanda Jones to come and talk about some example templates she has created and uses for her purposes. All right, Amanda.
Hi, thank you. Um, so I started out last fall. Early on in my mentoring, I had a JJYS caseworker come to me and ask me for an academic progress report on one of their students, or they had court coming up, and so I wasn't quite sure what that entailed. I mean, I knew we had some stuff in the Check and Connect zip drive, but I wasn't really sure what exactly I needed to share and what I could share. So after talking to school admin and a few other people, I created this document. I just call it my academic progress report. At the top, I think it's super important. I keep this information handy. It's kind of stuff that at the very top, you can see the student, date of birth, whether they have an IEP, their grade, that sort of thing. Um, I feel like it's important for me to have that at the top of the page. Also, the caseworker, anyone who's going to be reviewing this document needs to know kind of what we're facing. So I just talk about this is the outline for what I'm seeing at the school. And when I approach this document, I always try to use the sandwich method, which is something that's pretty common in education. Anytime you are trying to offer some constructive criticism, it's important to start out with something positive, kind of sandwich that in the middle, and then follow up with something positive. And there are times when the students could potentially see this document. This is something that I send out about once a term, usually towards the end of the term, unless a caseworker asks for it more frequently. So, um, as you can see here, in Twilley County School District, we have 10 classes. So I list what the classes are and what that student's current grade is. Um, I think it's important to do these. Typically, I will do them at the end of the term so that the caseworker knows what happened the previous term. But it can be done in the middle of the term as well. I've done that at times so that caseworkers kind of see what we're up against as far as like facing the next few weeks to try and get them credit for that term. So
Sorry, I was playing with the chat,
sorry,
Amanda.
yep, you're fine. You're totally fine. Okay, so this is the second part of that, and usually it's all on one page, but for this purpose, it's obviously broken down into two. But this is a student who came to me, and he was really interested in robotics. At the time, we weren't able to get him into a robotics class, so I just kind of talk here a little bit about how starting in the second semester, we were going to transition him to our community learning center, so our CLC, so that he could start taking some robotics classes and things that he really enjoyed. This particular student didn't have a lot of disciplinary issues or things that we needed to work on. So this is kind of our best case scenario for one of my students. But in the middle of this, after I follow up with grades, I will talk about things that we need to work on. Oftentimes with JJYS students, which that's a lot of what I work with, they will have goals that are set, by their caseworker and the courts and things that they need to accomplish. So in the middle, I like to talk about the goals and how they are doing at achieving those goals. I always talk about their behavior, things that I'm noticing. I spend a lot of time with these kids in the halls. I often visit with them in the lunchroom, or they'll come and visit me at lunch. I see who they're interacting, and I think that's all super important because it gives us the whole picture of what we're noticing with these kids. I typically spend way more time with them than their caseworkers do. Probably more time with them than foster parents even, So I like to give them a glimpse as to what I'm seeing at school. This student, he was really closed off as far as socially. He didn't have a lot of friends. He would spend every lunch with me. And sometimes I give him little projects to kind of work on in my room, or One time he helped fix, I have an indoor garden, and he helped kind of fix the water pump on that so that it would work again, and things that would just kind of keep him engaged. And so I think those were important things. He was looking for permanency placement. And so those were important things that I felt like the caseworker needed to take into account moving forward. So in the middle, I try to sandwich, if we have a student who I'm seeing little behaviors start to creep in, I like to include those in this area so that the caseworker is aware, everybody on the team, the care team is aware of what we're facing and what I'm seeing, so that it's not a surprise if this student happens to move to a new school and they see something there as well. So as you can see here, I talk about, I'm not seeing any behavioral concerns with this student. They're always respectful to the teachers and staff. If there was a time when I needed to include, like, we're working on some behaviors, they're maybe struggling in this class, then I would bring it up at this point. And I always try to make sure that at the end, I follow up with, we're working on helping this student get credit, stay engaged in school, and work towards graduation. So that's my academic progress report. Again, it was kind of created out of necessity. I didn't know what to do, and a caseworker asked me for this. So I just came up with it on a whim.
Well, we appreciate you sharing about it. We have one question. Is
Okay.
there space for teachers to provide a summary on their thoughts?
Typically not on this report. I do ask teachers, like, if I've had some students who, I'm noticing they're maybe tardy to a certain class or their avoidance in certain classes. So I will typically ask them and then summarize it on this document. So it's important to get teachers' feedback, but I don't usually put it directly on here. I kind of summarize it and then put it back on.
Thank you. All right, we ready to go to the next one?
Yep, we can move to the next slide.
All right.
So this is another document that I came up. I actually worked in a program prior to this, and it was called Mentoring for Success. So that was years ago through AmeriCorps. And it was more in the elementary level. So this is something that I came up with at that time, but I continue to use it through high school. So it just gives me, it's a quick snapshot. I call this kind of my attendance snapshot. And I give this, especially students that are more in the prevention side of things, that we need to work. Attendance is a huge issue with high school students, and their avoidance of classes and things like that. So I like to give this attendance snapshot to, sometimes we do have DCFS caseworkers who are wondering what's going on. So I like to send this out about once a term, maybe more frequently, like it can go out about once a month, but just to talk about, like, the school-wide goal is 92% attendance. Kind of give you an idea of where your student is at based off of where the rest of the school is. So, if your student is missing more classes than our typical student, this is going to directly correlate to their grades. So this is something that I like to send out to foster or proctor families, parents, so that they can kind of see what I'm noticing at the school level. There's a spot here. So I have a spot on this page for a parent signature and for them to return it. With prevention parents, this is super important, I feel like, for them to know what I am working on at the school level. So I send it home to prevention parents. They sign it and return it. It's easy to give the students, like, here's a candy bar. Thanks for returning this. That kind of helps me know, like, where they're at in their goals, make sure the parents know. And this could be easily sent out over email as well, just so that parents don't have to send the paper back, but just to make sure that communication is open. That's one thing that I've learned is so important with working with these kids, is that communication with caseworkers, families, admin at the school, staff is super important. And making sure that we're all on the same page, especially with these students who are moving from school to school to school. They're used to adults in their life maybe not following through. And so this is kind of my job, is to bring everyone to the same table, know what I'm seeing at the school, and making sure that everybody is in communication with this. So also, sorry, I should have mentioned this previously, but in my previous document that we were talking about, a lot of times these JJYS students have goals that they're working on specifically that pertain to how they're going to make it back to their, or be terminated from JJYS custody. So In that, I will talk a lot about the goals that and how they're working on those. Um, it could be consequential thinking, or that student may have trouble with authority. So I talk about how I'm seeing it at the school, and based off of the child and family team meetings, what those goals are. I like to revisit those in my communication home, just so that everybody knows what I'm seeing. And then when we are on those child and family team meetings, I can share as well. But I like to give that documentation, and that's something that caseworkers tend to really like, especially as those students get nearing termination from JJYS and have court appearances and stuff. It kind of gives them a good glimpses of what we're seeing at the school.
Awesome. Thank you, Amanda. Just checking, is everybody able to see the slides? We're getting a comment in the chat. Okay, Cindy, I'm not sure. You might want to go out and come back in. That might be part of the issue, but there's usually two Zoom screens, just so you know. All right, any question about Amanda's forms or how she has adapted those to work for both her JJYS and other YIC students? I'm not seeing any questions. Well, thank you, Amanda. I appreciate you and Charlene joining me today to share on those. All right, let me go ahead and introduce our guest speakers next. So first we have one of my teammates, Dave Sollami, and he's been working with the State Board of Education for about 3 years now as an education specialist and a Title I state coordinator. Dave was competing in Division I football at Brigham Young University while earning a degree in psychology with a minor in marriage, family, human development. I'm not good at the words today. Sorry, friends. Dave started his career working with juvenile justice and youth services in Utah over 17 years ago. He started as an intern and ended that chapter in his life by running some of the largest multifunction facilities in the state for juvenile corrections. David has completed multiple accredited programs, and he is a certified public manager. He also works in philanthropy and travels around the country to educate staff and youth on the disease of addiction as the executive director of a nonprofit called the McGee Project, which is some awesome work. He's also a father of 3 children and coaches high school baseball, loves the great outdoors and to go fishing. Dave's philosophy in life is empowering others to help individuals see and reach their true potential. All right, with Dave, we have Rachel Edwards, who is the Community Program Director for Juvenile Justice and Youth Services. She has been employed with the division for over 30 years and has been in many positions throughout her career that include detention, secure care, case management, quality assurance, and assistant program director. And she's now the director. Congratulations, Rachel. She has also participated in different committees like our UCC YIC, and she enjoys working with her staff and with her staff to provide resources to our students in custody. All right, our third presenter of the group is Destiny Upton, and she is a certified social worker with a master's in social work, and she's worked in a variety of capacities with the Utah Juvenile Courts. Most recently, she's a program coordinator for the administrative offices of the courts located in Salt Lake. Destiny is passionate and dedicated to working with Utah's youth and community partners. All right. Thank you so much for taking time to come present today. I'm pretty sure Dave's going to take over and share screen now.
Yep. Let's see here. Tell me if this works.
All right. Gotta find my Zoom screen while you do that.
Did that work?
I'm playing the too many screens game. Yes, it appears to have worked.
Okay, excellent. Let me see if I can now move my chat. It's funny when you click on that, it kind of goes bonkers and a bunch of things pop up. Okay, cool. I can't see anyone's faces, but I'm going to stare at the camera and do the best I can. Congratulations, Amanda. 50 webinars is quite the feat, and that's wonderful. Grateful for the opportunity to be here to present to the Check and Connect mentor crew. I'm a big advocate for Check and Connect. I think it's an incredible program. The work that you do is amazing work, and I've gotten the opportunity to travel around the state and do monitoring and see the good work from Check and Connect. So congratulations on that as well, and grateful to be able to be here. Grateful for my colleagues and partners for reintegration planning, Rachel and Destiny. And a big congratulations to Rachel. She is retiring next month, I believe. So well deserved, and grateful to have known her and worked with her for many, many, many years. So to set the stage about reintegration planning, I kind of wanted to kind of throw some things out there right away. Um, as far as reintegration plans and what they are and who they impact, it's not necessarily specific to youth and care. So saying that, so the code that we're going to talk about is code that is relevant for all of our school districts and LEAs across the state of Utah. Okay. And so when we thought about this, and looking at reintegration plans, and you'll kind of see why when we start to get into the code a little bit, is that we realize that this is good information for our Check and Connect mentors for a couple of reasons. One, the kids that typically need reintegration plans or who have had reintegration plans could potentially become later on down the road, unfortunately, a part of the youth and care programs. The other piece is that if a student or someone you're working with, um, is, I would say, eligible or falls under the criteria for reintegration planning, you could be asked to be a part of reintegration plans and part of what they call a multidisciplinary team. And we'll talk a little bit about that and what that looks like. So, a couple things. We're going to dive into code. We are going to go through it. It's not very long code, which is great. Um, Utah code. I don't know if anyone gets as excited as I do, but I actually do love Utah code. It's kind of fun to get in there and look at things. What you'll notice is that from this, even though it's a small piece of code, there could potentially be a lot of questions and a lot of follow-up. What I'll ask of everybody is to kind of hold on to those questions. Rachel and Destiny or myself, we might be able to answer that through the presentation today. But if not, we'd love to connect. We'd love to explore some of the things that might have sparked through this conversation. Okay, so first, what I'm going to do, if you want to, and this is something that you can open up on another screen if you have available, I'm going to send everyone directly where the code is. And let's see if I can do this. Boom. Let me know if the slides aren't progressing through and you can't see them. Okay,
You're
so
good.
reintegration planning, 53G 8213. So a little bit of background, this code was passed in 2023. And it's specifically, again, when we're talking about this, I just want to remind everyone, this is all students in Utah, okay? So students that have allegedly committed some specific crimes, and then this code was put into place for the purpose of being able to reintegrate them safely back into schools. So, from what I believe and what I feel and understand from this code, it really is a piece of law that is there to protect students that are enrolled in school and to protect our teachers and our administrators that are at the schools, and really to then identify specific students who could use a little bit more intervention, a little bit more resources to help them succeed. So the people who are in charge of this code, the lead, are the school district superintendents and or designees. So the superintendent is the lead, and they could have appointed some designees in your school districts to kind of oversee reintegration planning. Okay. Supportive roles is the USBE, so that's myself. So I've been assigned to provide technical assistance, to develop toolkits and templates and resources for our districts across the state, as well as the juvenile court and the juvenile justice service, juvenile justice and youth services. And you'll see kind of how they play a role in providing support for our school districts. Okay, so a quick overview. So again, we're going to kind of go through this because it's not very long, but essentially a school district will receive a notification from the juvenile court or a law enforcement agency that a student has been arrested for or charged with and or adjudicated in the juvenile court for a serious offense. I will put into so that you guys can kind of see what that looks like. What does that mean? What does serious offense mean? I'll provide some code. This code this is kind of like labels out a little bit what those serious offenses could look like. And then, once that the school receives that notification, the school then is now responsible to develop a reintegration plan with the multidisciplinary team. And they have about 5 days, school days, to be able to complete that plan. The school may deny admission to the student until the school completes the reintegration plan, so that's important to understand. And these are the three criterias that the reintegration plan in that multidisciplinary team that they are asking that they are, well, by law, are required to provide intervention or resources for that student. So you can see kind of how, this is an attempt to, one, keep everyone safe, but as well to provide specific resources for these students. And then if the serious offense was directed to at a school employee or another student within the school, notification of that reintegration plan to that school employee or student and or the student's parents that this reintegration plan has been completed and implemented. Okay. So a school district may not. So this is, very specific in code. So may not, cannot reintegrate a student into a school where a student or staff member has a protective order against the student being reintegrated, or a student or staff member is the victim of a sexual crime or forcible felony committed by the student being reintegrated. And so forcible felony was added to this code because every year this kind of code changes a little bit. But that was added to the code, and I'll provide some definition here in code to help you understand what a forcible felony is. And you can read. Again, there's a lot to this, so I'll let you guys read on your own if you're interested and you're a code nerd like myself. But there, I attached the link in there for that forcible felony. So sexual crime or forcible felony committed by the student being reintegrated. So again, students cannot be reintegrated. But it talks about it goes in to give schools a little bit of an option. So in part 6 it says a school district may elect to not integrate a student into a school if the student has committed or allegedly committed a forcible felony. And if that is the decision of the school, so they may not let, so if they decide to enforce that forcible felony and not elect that student to come back to school, then the school is going to be responsible to provide some type of alternative education options for that student. Okay. So again, what triggers a reintegration plan? School district receives notification from juvenile court or law enforcement agency, and they're arrested, charged, and or adjudicated in the juvenile court for a serious offense or an offense in violation. And then that email, again, is coming from the juvenile courts to that superintendent and or designee to let them know that that student has triggered a reintegration plan based on those offenses. Okay, so we'll turn some time over to Rachel, and then Rachel, just let me know when you're ready for the next slide.
Rachel, I'm not hearing you. Dave, are you hearing Rachel?
No.
Okay. Try making her. Do you have another microphone device? Down next to the little microphone is a little caret, and sometimes I have to select which one is my actual microphone I'm using.
How about that?
Aha, there we go.
There you go. Awesome. Thank you. I was just saying thank you very much for being here today to present on this. David and Destiny, we've been doing this for a little while, going and educating people about the reintegration. It's very interesting. Every year, it continues to change. They really fine tune it, and they end up finding things that maybe were missing at the beginning, and they didn't realize that. So this is a work in progress. So every year there's going to be some changes, I feel. So next slide, Dave. So just give a brief little overview. So with juvenile justice and youth services, youth who have been booked into detention on the serious offenses or weapon offenses, they're going to trigger an email that's going to be going to the superintendent. Based on this is kind of our staff that are working in our detention facilities, that when that youth is booked in, depending on that charge, then that email will be sent to the superintendents. So we're actually making sure that all of our intake staff are aware of which offenses will include this email. So then that way we're going ahead and giving it to the superintendents. Since July 12th of 2023 is when the reintegration process started for us to notify the superintendents. We've sent 547 emails. Now that number is just a tad bit different from juvenile court. And we've been working with juvenile court in regards to matching our numbers in the future and stuff like that. But so far, 547 have triggered an email to our superintendents statewide. Next slide, Dave. And this is just the sample of the email that a superintendent is going to receive. So basically just letting them know that that youth was brought into detention, indicates the code, and then indicates the name, what that allegation was, and then kind of giving them information on what to expect over the next couple of days. And then also if they have any questions, and we're going to be updating this email because we've had some movement in our juvenile justice and youth services. We have quite a few people retiring and a lot of people moving into different positions. And so Trina, who was over the Office of Detention and Shelter Services, now has been appointed to our deputy director. So some of you guys know, you may, Blake Murdoch from juvenile court is coming over to JJYS. He's going to be the new program director for detention and youth services. So we'll have to update some documents, and I've already talked to Destiny. We need to get together on doing that. But a couple of changes there. So that name will be a little bit different in the future. Next slide. Oh, that was it on me. Okay.
Yep.
I'll be back a little bit later.
Yep.
Hey, awesome. Hello, everybody. I'm Destiny. I work as a program coordinator at the Administrative Office of the Courts. Until Friday, I'm actually under Blake Murdoch, but now he's headed over to JJYS. But yeah, so the main purpose of my job is actually to send out these notification letters and attend meetings like this one to help support our community partners in a lot of this legislation that kind of changed a lot a couple of years ago. All right, go ahead, Dave. Pass that slide. Okay, so I just wanted to go over a little bit of how this works on our end with the juvenile court with the different types of letters that I'm required to send out. The first one I'm going to talk about is the letters I send out when there's been an adjudication of a serious offense or weapons offense of a youth. So essentially what happens with that is a youth has an adjudication or pretrial hearing. We kind of use both terms quite a bit. Once they are adjudicated of a serious offense or a weapons offense, then I actually have multiple types of reports that pull that information. I go through those reports, I double check to make sure the information on the order is correct, that these youth do qualify for a notification letter, and then send that out. Notification letters are required to be sent to the local education agency. So I use a lot of different tools to be able to send to the correct school district or charter school. If the youth is not enrolled anywhere, I send that to the local school district within which the youth resides. And then with detention letters, the way that those are triggered, I guess, to be sent is a youth is booked into detention, and then they have their initial detention hearing. Once that initial detention hearing order is signed, then that triggers essentially my reports for me to send out that letter again to the local education agency, which includes both school districts and charter schools. Those letters get sent to law enforcement agencies as well. Adjudication letters only get sent to the schools. All right, Dave, on to the next one. Okay, and then the other two types of letters that I send out are placed on formal probation letters and released from probation letters. Both of these are only for formal probation. So there are two types of probation in the juvenile court. One is intake. Presumptively, we hope that's only going to last about 3 months, and those are kids that tend to be on the lower risk side. And we have a few assessments to determine that with. Formal probation is usually around 6 months. It can be extended beyond that if needed. And these are usually your higher risk kids who need more intensive interventions. So with both of these, what triggers it is truly an order from the court placing or releasing a youth from or to formal probation. These letters don't require a reintegration plan. So I actually prioritize sending out adjudication and detention letters, and then probation letters are after everything else has been sent out, as this is kind of more of an FYI from us that we're required to send by statute. All right, Dave, next one. So just like Dave sent you the link actually of a lot of this information. These are many of the serious offenses included. These are specifically the sexual offenses described in this serious offense list. So that you're aware of what those are. I have these on there because there is a difference in serious offense and forcible felony for the juvenile court. So we are required to send out letters on serious offenses and weapons offenses, but not all forcible felonies, as described in statute for schools to be aware of, trigger a notification letter from us. A lot of those include sexual offenses. So these are the ones that trigger those notifications. Anything outside of this list that are considered forcible felonies, we do not send letters on those. Okay, Dave, go. And then, yeah, this is a little bit more about what sexual offenses we do not send notification letters on that fall under that forcible felony, but that are not considered serious offense for us to send out letters. And that includes enticing a minor, lewdness, and lewdness involving a child. And then anything that's misdemeanor level, except for weapons offenses, we don't send notification letters on. Okay, Dave. Okay, so the way that I figure out what school to send this to is I actually have a login directly into Utrex. So I log into the SSID program, we'll look up a kid just like you guys would and see what their history of enrollment is. If they're not in an active enrollment in a school, I send it to the school district that they reside in. Other situations where I may send letters that the kid is not actively enrolled anywhere is if a youth is placed in a residential treatment center, they're considered to be in custody in the state of Utah. So even if they're from out like Nevada or something and they're only here for residential treatment, we still send that to the local school district as they're considered in placement here. And then any youth enrolled in online schools, we actually send that to the local school district so that they're the local education agency. And if that youth ever unenrolled in online and enrolled back into a school district or charter school in person, you would have that information. Okay, and then our probation officers have limited access to the SSID program and UTREX in our care system, which is what that yellow box screenshot is from. They have a button they can click and see the most recent school the youth was enrolled in. And so they don't have the capability I do to log in and really look at all of the history, but they can see the most recent information. Okay, all right, Dave. And then this is contact information. If you have any questions about why you're getting letter for a kid, because if you don't see them enrolled in school, you're welcome to contact Dave, Benji, or me anytime. So please do that if you have any questions. The letters I do send out, they come from an email that is not monitored. So anytime you have questions, you're going to want to contact me directly. Okay, next. Oh, did I have the slide twice? Oops. Okay. This is just an example of what some of the attachments on the emails we send out look like. Those emails are now sent directly from our software system called CARE. And so this is an example of the information you'll have. And like what Rachel said, she and I need to get together and update some of this information, but it will always include contact information for JJYS, contact information for me, and then and in the future, it won't be Rachel anymore. This is so sad, Rachel, to be honest. And then the assigned probation officer. Now, if the youth is in JJYS custody and does not have a probation officer, I include the JJYS information at the bottom of the email as well to show that they're in that custody, so that everyone is kind of on the same page of who is working directly with that youth. Okay. All right, Dave, go ahead and go to the next one. This is what the attachments look like in the email. So it includes a certificate of service. That just proves in our court system that this was sent in the way that it's supposed to. A letter that outlines what is occurring, and then the information that I just showed you. Okay. All right, Dave. And then this is an example of that letter. Sometimes they will include a victim, sometimes they won't. They include victims when victims are under the age of 18 and when they reside or are enrolled in the same school district. So say both kids live in Orem, I would send a letter containing the victim's information. If the victim resides in Salt Lake and the youth is in Santaquin and they reside and attend 2 different school districts, I do not include victim information. Okay, continue, please.
Just real quick. What timeline is Yogi Bear the defendant? And Lex Luthor is the victim.
Right?
I love it. That's awesome.
Thank you. I'm glad you noticed that. Yes. And I have some questions about it, actually. And then this is our contact information for the administrative offices. Currently over this is myself, so please contact me, of course, with any questions. And then the juvenile court administrator is Daniel, and he will not be leaving his position. And then, of course, this will be updated once we know who is taking Blake's place. But please contact either me or Daniel with any questions as well. Okay. All right, Dave.
Excellent. Thank you, Destiny. And as just real quick, as everyone can see that, this code is complex. And I can say that the success of this code in our school districts has been because of the great partnerships that we have with the juvenile courts and juvenile justice. So it's great work that everyone's doing to ensure the safety of our students and our staff. Okay, let's talk about the multidisciplinary team. This is, again, part of the code. I wanted to just really focus on this for a second, just to show everyone who's a part of it, who's going to provide, who's going to be able to, who's required to be there, and then talk a little bit about how this could play into a Check and Connect mentor's role. Okay. So again, the lead, the local education agency, is required. Juvenile court probation officer are required. Juvenile justice and youth services. So with juvenile justice and youth services in our areas around the state, there are what they call youth. So they're part of the youth service part, and they're called plan managers. And so they will most likely be the ones that will be involved in that on that multidisciplinary team. And youth services provides, I know Rachel's going to talk about this potentially a little bit, and I'll let her speak to it. She's the expert. But they provide a lot of resources for our students and for our families on their free will, essentially. School safety and security specialists. So these are, each school district has people assigned to these roles, and so they are required to be a part of the team. The director as well. Resource officers, if they're applicable. And then any relevant party that should be involved in a reintegration plan. This is where Check and Connect mentors could potentially be asked to sit in on these teamings for these students. And so this is why we felt like it'd be really important for our Check and Connect mentors to know a little bit more about what happens during a reintegration plan. Again, the 3 requirements that the meeting must address with each student is create a behavioral intervention for the student, short-term mental health or counseling services, and academic intervention. So again, this is where I feel like, again, this code is focused on safety for everyone, but as well as getting resources for the student who's struggling. And I think that's really important. And I know we all know that here, feel that way. Okay, Rachel.
Awesome. Okay. So right there is our website. So you can access that. And on the website, we have it broken out in regards to the difference in regards to services for youth services, kind of what detention is, shelter, those that are ordered into custody. So community programs, as well as secure care for those youth that end up going to secure. So a lot of information on our website, a lot of different drop-down boxes that gives more detail on the services that we can provide. So if you're not familiar with that, I highly encourage you to look at that website. In regards to youth services, so youth services is a voluntary program that really focuses on working with youth that are not in custody. And so by custody, I mean like JJYS custody. So it's preventive. And so anybody can make a referral to youth services. And again, on the website, if you go to youth services, you can do a drop down, there's a referral. So we have referrals from school counselors, from principals, from neighbors, grandma and grandpa, even maybe their own parent, a mentor, Check and Connect mentor, anybody that feels that maybe this youth might need some additional services. And I can kind of go through those services here in a little bit. So just to let you know, if a youth and family are interested, again, it's voluntary. If they are, we'll work on getting an individualized youth and family plan with comprehensive access to services that we have, standardized models through the state with a single hub to streamline all early intervention services, screening and assessment to accurately identify the youth and family strengths and needs, and ability to procure services based on that youth and family's needs. Next slide, David. So our desired outcome is we really want to keep the youth safe in their homes, schools, and the communities. And then early screening of youth and family strengths and needs, and connect the youth and families to the appropriate services in the community. So just so you guys know, we take data. Data is very important. It lets us know how we're doing. With our youth services, those youth that have participated in youth services, they track after once they've been terminated, about 3 months after they're pulling data to see if youth has received any felonies or misdemeanors. We actually have a 99.6% rate where they have not picked up any new charges. So, it's so important for these youth to be able to receive these services early. And we're finding, that out instead of kind of hitting them at the tail end and trying to provide services later. And then things have changed where sometimes back in the day, it was felt you had to come into custody to get services. Whereas, now we have a different approach, which is able to help a lot more youth and the families out there. Youth services is statewide. So just FYI on that, when you're looking at the link, there's a map on there too, where you can kind of point your area and it will indicate like who our contact people are, but it is statewide. So during that referral, as you're filling it out, that referral will automatically go to my assistant program director that oversees those counties. And then they talk with their supervisors and their leads. Within 48 hours, we want to have somebody contact the family in regards to that referral to see if they're interested to get the process started. Sometimes they're interested, sometimes they're not, and that's okay. But we always let them know they can come back at any time. Just let us know. Next slide. So kind of what I've talked a little bit about before. So parent, law enforcement, court, school, online referral. We take youth ages 10 to 18, primarily in the need of services due to its child's behavior to get the support that they need. Our goal is to have somebody reach out to the individual within 48 business hours of submission. Now, my community staff also have been working facility shifts. And so, that 48 hours might kind of have gone up to 72, but really the goal is still within 48 hours to reach out to the person to see if they're interested in receiving those services. We have the screenings. They are key into determining the right services for that youth at the earliest time. So staff will meet with the youth and family, ask them questions regarding the services that they may need and what they need to be working on. And then our assessment tools are utilize evidence-based, data-driven decisions, interventions that look at the families and the youth and family strengths and needs and what strategies will best achieve a positive outcome. So sometimes it may be where a youth just needs to come in and get some skill-based groups, some DBT, we have a girl circle, maybe some ADAPT training, and then others that maybe need, individual therapy or maybe even some family therapy. So it really kind of depends on that assessment and what that youth and family needs at the time. Next. So Plan A, we have a youth and family plan. It's developed regarding the strength-based and guided by the youth and emphasizes on the family's voice. And then we have our follow-up. The transition is the key to successful outcomes. Follow-up provides support to the youth and family while assisting to maintain connection to community resources. So say the family plan is maybe that youth might need some skill-based groups, and then maybe some family therapy. Maybe they need some, like a Families First. So we would develop that family plan, include that. The plan manager would meet with the youth in person or via the phone, depending on distance, because sometimes our two Richfield plan managers travel, it seems like across the state to provide services. So they may have more phone contact than in person, but just making sure that the family's needs are being met. And then normally you're looking at maybe about 6 months, maybe to 9 months that they're probably with us. There's been times where they've gone a little bit longer, but that kind of really, again, depends on the need for that youth and the family, and that plan manager is working with them to assess that as well. Next slide. Nope, that's it for me.
Hey, so I just want to give a little bit insight into how probation officers are guided to work with schools. With the courts, there are certain things that we're not allowed to share, but we try to share everything we can. So essentially, every probation officer is given this guide to help them know how to work well with the community partners while maintaining the confidentiality that exists within the courts, while still trying to work with, well, all of you who are trying to help these kids in their everyday life, especially when they spend so much time at school. So this is just some of that information. And then go ahead and go to the next slide, Dave. And then this outlines what probation officers can share. So they can share any information that I provide in those notification letters. They can share redacted court orders for the youth that are in our jurisdiction if it relates to their school performance and needs. And they can also share information about community resources that can help the youth or the youth may be involved in. And then they can also work with you guys to know kind of what they're providing on their side, what risk level the youth is, and what that means for us, and how we approach some of those interventions and what treatments they may be in depending on those interventions. And a lot of that depends on their risk level as well. Most of the time, the letters we're sending out are on youth who are going to end up being moderate or high level risk. It does not usually happen with low risk kids for us. It can every once in a while, but it's pretty rare. And then we have a couple of assessments just to kind of give you guys an insight of what we do. They're called the PSRA and PRA. I can't ever remember. I know that it's protective and risk assessment for the PRA. The PSRA is the pre-screen version of that. So if the pre-screen essentially says that they're a moderate or high risk level, we then do the protective and risk assessment and find out what their protective factors are, what their risk factors are, and then work with the youth for them to set goals to continue working on those protective factors, which can be anywhere from family, friends, that they enjoy school, sports they may be involved in. It can involve a lot. And then recognizing what factors or skills they need to work on. One was mentioned earlier was consequential thinking is one that we actually work on through these case planning items is what we call it. So you can have a little bit inside. We do not share the assessments with the schools. Those we're not really allowed to share that, but the probation officer can work with the school to let you know what they are working on with the youth. So that's a little bit idea of how the probation officers approach that with assessment, how we determine what interventions a youth may need. We also have our own interventions, one called alternative response training that we work with the Department of Human Services, I believe in Weber County, to provide that. And we also do different things one of them is called carry guides, which are skill building activities, sometimes a little bit of psychoeducation, and kind of tried to work with them on building skills there. Okay, Dave.
Okay, awesome. Okay, so thanks Destiny, thanks Rachel. We've shared some resources. We've gone through the code with everybody. I'm going to share in the link even more information and resources. This link will take you to where the toolkit is that we've designed with our partners here for our LEAs, as well as there will be a template that's going to be linked on that shared link I just had shared with everybody in the next few days. It's completed, and we're just waiting for final approval on what that template could look like. So with that, again, when I hear everything and I go through this presentation with our partners so many times, what I hear is, there are a lot of great resources for our kids within an education, under an education umbrella, and there's a lot of good resources for our kids out in the community as well. And so if we all work together and, and meet each other halfway and develop good strategies and practices, I think there are some big mountains that we can move together, and some great miracles to see within these children's lives. So just thank you again, Amanda, If we have any questions, we'll do our best to answer them. But that would conclude our presentation.
Well, thank you. I love that every time my team presents, I learn some little new thing about what it is we do. So I even appreciate today's presentation. We have time. We're a little bit ahead. If anybody wants to ask questions now in the general group, you're welcome to throw it in the chat or come off mute. All right. Looks like everybody's eager to go into breakout rooms. I am not sad about this. So what I'm going to do is try and do one thing at a time and just open the breakout rooms here. Hang on one second, friends. So I'm going to create two, let participants choose two breakout rooms. So in breakout room number 1, Dave, Destiny, and Rachel, if you guys will go into that one, you should see a pop-up menu on your screen somewhere that says join, and it will let you select which room. And then in room 2, if I can have Julia, Charlene, and anybody else left on the call that's part of my training team, hop into room 2 to help answer problems and practice questions. We have more than our normal time, so I will leave the rooms open until about a little bit, maybe 5 minutes before 11, and then I'll bring everybody back.